Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
You are live with Courtside with Lawman.
And Carmen B.
And we are here as we are every Friday to talk about issues with the criminal justice system. We can answer your questions and we will in chat or if you send us an email. The phone number is 916-384-8204. Again, that number 916-384-8204. We would like to state that the public, we want to inform and educate the public. Answering your questions does not, we have to state, does not create an attorney-client relationship between yourself and myself or yourself and Lawman. But we do want to provide the information to the community. Please feel free to call in with your questions.
And we probably could handle a lot of questions we probably can handle. But tonight, I think we want to talk a little bit about what the past week has been like in relationship to the relationship between Black people and police officers. Funny how it keeps coming up again each and every time. And funny how sometimes we get in the same kind of result. So there are two incidents in particular that have occurred. The first in Minnesota, and it's ironic, I guess, that the trial for the Floyd case is going on right now, and this happens 10 miles from that area. And the other, I believe it's, I forget which state that is.
The other state, so that the incident that you were talking about initially is the Daunte
Yes.
Wright incident, and that happened in Minnesota. And then the second incident that has been in the news is the one that occurred in Virginia.
Yes, that's it.
With the lieutenant,
Yes.
an officer in the military who is serving his country,
Yes.
who was mistreated horribly by law enforcement.
Correct. And what we see, in at least in both incidents, I see what I always am looking for, and that's a amount of disrespect, a large bit of skepticism, a lot of accusations by the officers. I mean, the way they handle the situation.
The officers being
Sure.
disrespectful.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, they come basically, how they say, with guns blaring. You know, they come at you and the stop itself as if you were wanted, and you know they're searching for someone when they know not who they're dealing with at all. And that became obvious in the soldier story. I mean, they didn't even recognize possibly he was wearing a uniform.
Oh, they recognized it. You can't miss a soldier's uniform. It's clearly obvious. Not only is it a specific type of a uniform, it's camouflage, but in addition to that, he's going to have his rank, which is going to show on his collar. He's going to have his name tape that shows as well. And that incident started out as a traffic stop because they could not see the license plate because he had a newly purchased vehicle. So I think it had
the papers in the window.
The paper in the window. And so because it was dark initially, they could not see it. But once the vehicle stops and they're approaching that vehicle, they can see it.
Yeah.
They have to see it. And so they do it in a way, what is traditionally known as a felony stop, a high-risk felony stop. And that means they're going to stop the person with their guns out and pointed at the person. But here, there was no basis for that. The claim is that he drove too far, right?
But he didn't speed. He didn't speed.
He didn't speed.
Didn't try to evade.
Didn't try to evade. He's driving to get to a lit place. Now, law enforcement can say, we didn't know why he was driving away from us and not immediately stopping. But why is the first assumption that the person must be doing something criminal?
Well, and also logic has to kick in here. if he was trying to evade, why is he going the speed limit and slowing and goes underneath what would be the gas station and pumps area, so to speak, where there is ample lighting? I mean, if he was trying to evade and that's what you were investigating and wondering about, then he probably would have been hitting corners and turns and things like that.
Well, and at this point, he has stopped for you.
Right.
And the time period which he drove, my understanding, was not an extensive time period.
Right. Maybe a mile, not even that.
And then once he is in a safe place, he stops, he lets his window down, and he's asking, what's the problem?
And he starts putting his hands out of the window when they demand that. So he's now obeying their commands.
He was.
And we see that they go back and forth. And what was, I think, a couple of things disturbing. The first one was he was expressing his fear.
Which he had every right to be. Anytime someone has a gun pointed at you, you should be afraid.
Right.
Law enforcement is allowed, apparently, to be afraid when guns are not being pointed at them.
Anything.
So imagine someone who has two officers pointing their guns at him.
And being military, he probably recognized they were weapons, because you would.
And again, you don't even need to be in the military. You see their uniforms, you know they're cops, and they're pointing their weapons at you. That is going to cause an extreme amount of fear in anyone, and especially in an African-American male, in light of what has been happening in the news time after time after time in these traffic stops. And what we hear about are the traffic stops that make national news. Now, the incident that happened with the lieutenant, and I believe his name is Lieutenant Caron Nazario. I believe it actually happened back in December. The reason, and no one, did you hear about it in December?
Not at all.
So it wasn't in the news. As egregious as it was not in the news. It is in the news now because he has filed a civil suit against the officers for their illegal behavior.
Right. And we got to analyze this situation, because on the one hand, he did everything right. He at least did things to where it wouldn't cause a reasonable person to feel that the person had their danger in mind, to do danger to them, to do anything to anyone, but to comply. And that's what I mean by the officers seem to come up and automatically it's
aggressive.
Feud.
Yeah, it's automatically aggressive.
And that, I don't know if that's taught or acquired or it's just within them. But what we know is once he did have communication with the officers, he is using his hands out the window and he expressed, I'm afraid to get out of the vehicle.
And the officer's response to that was, you should be afraid. Now that just created even more fear, right? The officer has his gun pointed at you and he says to you, you tell him you're afraid. He doesn't try to calm you down and say, hey, we have to figure this out. We need you to step out of the car. There's no need to be afraid as long as you comply. No, his response is, you should be afraid.
That's right. Now, Carm, I'm going to take, so that everybody understands, we got to look at things in two ways, right?
Of course.
So, as to the stop and the behavior before that, okay? What do you think that an officer would be feeling at that time? Now, I'll throw this out. Okay, this car is dark. I can't see inside of it. And I can't see the plates. I mean, no, there's no plates, so there must be something in the window, and I can't see it right now. Now, one of the first things the cop could do, obviously, is drive up next to the car and look for those things while they're safe in their own vehicle.
And there were two officers there. So if one officer couldn't see and they're driving, they could get closer.
That's right.
To him, and the officer who's not driving could then see and look for whether or not there was a plate or whether or not there was something in the window that they could run to confirm that this was a legitimate vehicle.
Now, here's the problem. They don't need to run anything yet, because if you purchased a vehicle and you put the paperwork in the window like you should, there's no reason to believe that the car is stolen, because that would be the only conclusion you would draw if you saw nothing on it. And that might not even be a fair conclusion to draw.
That's not the only conclusion, and that's certainly not a fair conclusion, because we live in a society where people buy cars all of the time. Now, in different states, there are probably different ways
rules
of displaying.
Right.
Now in California, you actually it used to be you would just get a piece of paper that would be posted in the window. And I believe it actually would be in the front window.
Yes. Yes.
So if the officer was behind you, there would be no plate for him to see unless if it was a brand new car. But he would have to stop you in order to be able to see that the piece of paper that is in the front window.
Now, I'm saying you don't have to stop to find that out. If that was what you were looking for, you don't have to stop. You can actually come up next to the vehicle, shine a light, do anything to see, okay, if that's what I'm looking for.
I believe that the law will, in those instances, that the law does allow the officer to stop the vehicle because there is no plate, because there could be that not having a plate is a traffic violation.
True.
And then he could determine, it's a new car. I see the VIN number in the window, and then allow the person to, he could check the VIN and then allow the person to proceed on.
And I know that, but if my true intention is to determine whether this vehicle driving on the roadways has the proper information displayed, and I can do that by not causing danger to anyone or pulling them over, delay,
well,
I should probably do that.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, right?
That's what I want to play.
With the small piece of paper in the window,
yes,
right? The officer can't see what's written on that paper. So it could be that I've actually stolen the car from a lot. I've just put a piece of paper in the window to make it look like it is the temporary registration.
Right.
So I believe that the law will allow the officer, at least in the instances where there is the paper plate, which we have now, to check that documentation to make sure that it actually belongs to that vehicle.
Now I will counter by saying, if cars are bought and sold every day, then why and how could my paperwork not being in the right place, or being in the right place but you cannot see it, how come that raises a suspicion that something is wrong with the driving of this vehicle, that it's either stolen or I've got fake stuff on it?
Because the proper documentation is not visible.
But it's visible if I look for it, right? If I go and I'm driving and I look for it.
Except that, and we can disagree on this point.
Oh, we're going to. We should.
If the paper is in the window, the officer has no way of knowing what that paper actually says unless he stops the vehicle to confirm that that is the actual registration paperwork for the vehicle.
But Carmen, why should an officer automatically assume?
I'm not saying that he should.
But why do you give them leeway to assume that the paperwork is not proper, even if something is there?
I don't. The law has given them that ability.
But the law is based on reasonableness. And it would be unreasonable to believe that I see the paper in the window and I believe it must be fake.
I'm going to say it's not that the officer believes that it's fake. He's confirming that the paperwork is actually the paperwork to that vehicle.
Then why not put a stop?
That I disagree with you. What I'm telling you is what I know that judges will say. And judges will say that where the officer couldn't determine, because there's normally on a car, there's a license plate.
Right.
The officer can run the license plate.
Right.
And they can run the license plate without stopping you or contacting you at all and determine who the registered owner is.
Now, you realize that officers are not hired to go around and run license plates of every car that they see.
Oh,
that
really?
is not that. No.
Oh, really? Well, then you better check what's been going on in Sacramento. What are you talking about? They have license plate readers on almost every corner.
That is true.
And not just the license, they also have mobile license plate readers. So they are constantly reading plates.
They're not reading them in real time.
Yes, they are.
Nah, they go back and get that information to find out where a car has gone when they pump it in the system.
No. That is one thing that they can do, but they are also reading those plates in real time.
But the reading is not an individual officer who is positioned behind the car.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it is not. So there are mobile license plate readers that are affixed to some to patrol vehicles, some to, and those are constantly reading plates. And if it is a mobile one that is affixed to a vehicle that an officer is in, he can get that information in real time. It is not always going back and looking in the past to see where a car has been.
So basically, then what?
Big Brother is watching.
Oh, well, Big Brother may watch, but is it reasonable for Big Brother to watch? And if Big Brother is watching me, why wouldn't they be watching everyone? Right?
They're watching. They are watching you in more ways than you can imagine.
Now, here's the thing, though. Big Brother's not pulling everybody over. Big Brother's not pulling all cars over.
Who's Big Brother pulling over?
Big Brother, he's pulling over people where he must believe there's a crime or something is going on, because now we're stepping into the Fourth Amendment. You can run my plate and do that stuff all you want, but if I'm not committing any crime, if I'm not doing anything to make you believe that I'm doing a crime.
And the officers in that case are going to say, we couldn't see, and because they never say that, oh, once we stopped them, we could see it.
True.
They maintain that they could
had to
not
walk
see
and
it.
Look at it. Right. Now, I still say there is a reasonableness standard to the ability to pull people over when you don't know something is true or not true. And I'm just saying, if something's in the window, why would I presume something is wrong with the paperwork?
Why would the officer presume?
Yes,
that
exactly. I'm playing officer. Yes. Why would that happen?
Why does it happen? You and I both know why it happens. You and I both know why it happens, lawman.
Okay.
It happens because that's someone that they want to stop.
Right.
There's certain.
Well, do they see something else that goes on?
We know that racial profiling happens.
Exactly.
Now,
if we know that, and we can throw up stats all over the place. In fact, here in Sacramento, they've had profiling committees and things like that, making recommendations.
But it hasn't stopped.
Oh, no. So if, in fact, we're going to racially profile, how can I stop that? How can we stop them from doing that?
You tell me.
Okay. One of the things that we possibly can do is more pressure on the city council, frankly, of moving about change when things are amiss and wrong, when there are recommendations that here are what officers doing. We need to change their behavior. Now, I know, and you know, Carm, really, this is an asset gaining business. Heck, if I can just write a ticket out of it, somebody's making some money off of it. But if something else happens, and I'm clearing the streets or so.
I guess one of the problems that I see with this is if they were just writing tickets, but allowing us to continue to live, allowing our young men to be able to come home to their families safely, then, I wouldn't be as upset.
That's right.
But the problem is they're not doing that.
And therefore there is something almost sinister, something. Remember I was saying how they always come at the situation is that even if my paperwork is wrong, why does it mean you got to pull a gun on me?
And that's why didn't the guns, if they believed, hey, we might have a potentially violent felon in here, and maybe he's driving slow, because there are other things they could have been thinking. Maybe he's driving slow because he's taking time to hide evidence in the car, right? Once they approach the car and they see that this is a United States soldier, a young man who is serving his country, the attitude and demeanor should have been different, but it wasn't. And so what is it that makes that demeanor take place? What is it? Is it brown skin? Is it black skin? Lawman, what is it?
It's
why is it that we are what 13% of the population,
right?
Generally in the United States, 13 to 14% of the population.
True.
And in most cities, the larger cities, ranging about that same way. But we are finding out that we're 40% of the traffic stops. Those numbers don't make sense. How is that possible unless you are purposely just stopping African American people? And as a mother as a mother of two young people, ages 19 and 23, I worry every time they get into their cars and leave the house. And I've tried my best to train them as to what they need to do. But as you saw with Lieutenant Nazario, he didn't do anything wrong except for ask,
what's going on here, right? What's going on here?
And I guess the officer felt like you don't even get to ask that question.
Right. Because if the answer to that question is, well, I thought that your paperwork was messed up.
Why is he so aggressive?
Right.
Why so aggressive?
Right. So
when there's as far as we know, I haven't heard anything about there was a violent felon who driving that same kind of vehicle. There was a violent robbery that had just occurred.
Dark SUV.
Yeah, there was something else that would justify that demeanor. And I just don't see it. What I see is they see brown skin, they see black skin, and they think that they can mistreat us.
Yes. And if not mistreat, to treat us, you see.
Or not just mistreat, at times kill us.
Right.
And that brings us to what happened with Daunte Wright.
Right.
Because that started as a traffic
stop once again. Now, at that particular time, he's driving along, traffic stop. We don't, at least from where I see the cameras, I mean, obviously there might have been in-car cameras, the body cams in the very beginning in the initial. Mm-hmm. But what I do know is that it was a warrant, apparently, that might have been bogus, or at least might have been taken care of, but not cleared in the system, or something like that. Order to pay fines, something like that. Something minor, though. Okay, I mean, owe money on a ticket, let's say. We know that may have been there. Now, apparently, he did not realize, or he realized that and felt he had taken care of whatever it is they felt he had a warrant for. But the video does pick up outside the car when they're trying to cuff him, at least, right? And take him into custody. Now, it appears, I'm wondering about the warrant now, because our warrants here, right? You can have a SOC warrant. And a SOC warrant means you owe time. You owe something.
You owe a sentence.
Right.
The judge has already sentenced you. You were supposed to turn yourself in.
And you didn't.
You failed to do it.
With that, they can take you right to jail. Don't pass go. But other warrants, maybe an arrest warrant, where there's a new crime alleged against you, and you can be arrested because of that. And it's in the system. Or a bench warrant, where you failed to show up at your court date, and there's a warrant in the system.
Did you, and I don't think, I have not heard what the warrant was for Mr. Wright. Have you?
Now, I've heard discussions that it was some sort of failure to pay fine. You see, whereby, where
there needs to be a policy where if it is a infraction or a misdemeanor, officers should not be using physical force at all. Because now for something, if it is failure to pay a fine, for something so ridiculous, this young man is no longer here on this earth to raise his children, to be a blessing to his mother.
And there's a secondary thing. Now, I told you the bench warrant and the arrest warrant, right? Now, if one of those are there, basically you got to comply.
They can arrest you. But let's say, even with that, the problem that we have, Lawman, is that we have seen other people in similar situations who don't get the treatment that we get.
Absolutely. People who don't have a warrant So you don't have one and you're treated that way.
Lieutenant Nazario
Right.
did not have a warrant.
There's no warrants
was
out there.
not suspected of any crime.
Right.
There were no reports of a violent crime that had occurred where he matched the description, yet he still got that same disparate treatment. So
if, in fact, they know that he has a warrant, the only thing I can think of in terms of putting a person in custody would be if, in fact, they had to take the car, you see, or something, impound the car, because there are a lot of even traffic tickets. They can impound the vehicle if you're driving, But
my problem is that no matter if that warrant, it sounds like it was a minor warrant, should not have resulted in using violent force.
Absolutely.
Even if he got in the car and tried to drive away, it still did not require the use of violent force.
Well, deadly force also.
Yes.
I mean that's
yes.
Now let's just remember I said
have a comment from Sheepdog Protector. Sheepdog Protector said he did not even know that he had the warrant. It was sent to the wrong address.
Exactly. Now I can tell you this, and listen to this, you guys. We are responsible for the court having our proper address. Sometimes we move and we forget to notify the court because it was a traffic ticket. It was something that the court had, but actually we're held responsible for doing that. DMV, the same way. If DMV sends some notice to you and it goes to your last address, DMV is seen as still giving that kind of notice to you. So we have to be careful about things like that, something that may be sent to the wrong place. But nevertheless, even if that was the case, I can only think the reason to try to put him in custody and take his car or whatever they wanted to do, that I don't know if that was justified at that time, because his driver's license, if this was some warrant and didn't affect his ability to drive, then why wouldn't there be a cite out and then you go about your way? You see, I mean, in that
if it's a failure to appear warrant, a lot of times they're going to take you in on it because the court may have issued a no bail warrant because of the fact that you failed to appear, even though the charge itself is something minor. But again, we have seen other people in these same situations, and I believe, Lawman, you were showing me the video tonight that I've seen before, where there is an individual who not only this individual is not a person of color,
large white guy
who physically fights with law enforcement. I believe he takes their
two of them
baton, and is striking both of them with it, and gets in their car and drives away. And he lives to do that. A gun. In fact, the guns don't even come out.
Yeah. So there are different ways of handling situations. Like we've seen the ones where people are stopped and white guys may have a gun in the car. And the officers are treating them like, hey, yes, sir, no, sir, and stuff. We've seen situations where individuals are spouting very much anger at the officers for stopping them and asserting their rights. And they happen to be melatonin free. And the officers are letting them do what they have to do. And not taking offense to it at all.
Well, when you say the officers are letting them do what they have to do, what you really mean is that the officer is allowing them to express their displeasure at having been stopped.
That's right.
And they can even curse at the officer.
That's right.
And they don't get the treatment that we see African Americans receiving in these traffic stops.
And that's what I mean. Why is the attitude so different?
What is
different?
What is it, Lawman?
Well, I guess we got to go back to 1690. They ain't got the time to get all that history, but we've got to go back and look at our history and realize that history, if you don't know your history, if you don't understand what's happening, we're doomed to repeat it. And right now, I think what's happening is our history in the United States has been so hidden, so undercover, so that we don't have to discuss it every day. It's a move on attitude. We forget that the law never changes a person's mind. Never.
Well, when you say move on, you're talking about people saying, well, stop talking
That's
about
right.
slavery.
It isn't about race. What are you
move
talking
on from
about?
slavery. And if slavery
just
was
bad
the
people.
only thing that had been done to us.
Oh, history. That's why I'm saying when we start there, when we start coming up to Jim Crow, everything starts just morphing into something different. That's all. But there's a consistent theme in American history.
To oppress.
That's right.
And that is what has continued to happen. It just has taken different forms. Redlining is a form of oppression.
Right.
We have a comment in the chat from Sheepdog Protector. If we are under arrest and they take our phone, how do we call anyone? Mm-hmm. And if they take our phone and tell us to unlock it, should we unlock it?
Take the second one first.
Do not unlock.
Do not unlock it.
You are not required to unlock your phone. Your phone contains a ton of private information. You are not required to give them your code. You are not required to unlock your phone, and do not do it.
And remember the Fifth Amendment, your right to remain silent.
Yes. Yes. And that means by remaining silent, you do not need to give them your code.
Correct.
You do not need to use your finger to unlock your phone.
Correct.
And 9 times out of 10, do not believe their statement that, well, if you just do this, then we can figure this out and let you go. Because that's not likely. They're not likely to let you go if they have you detained and believe that you have committed a crime, right, even if they are wrong, right? So the first part of the question, if we are under arrest and they take our phone, how do we call anyone? Well, you won't be able to call if they take your phone. Correct. But when you are taken down to the station, at some point, they will give you an opportunity to make that one phone call that you always hear about. But beware. Normally here in Sacramento, they put you in a booking cell and you can make as many free calls as you would like, because what they are hoping is that you will get on the phone and you will say things that are incriminating and things that will be used against you. And so do not use that free phone call or phone calls to do that. Use that phone call to call your loved one and notify them where you are.
Someone's answering, I think.
Yes. They would need. CC Badger is also answering.
Right.
Nope. You will need a warrant for that as well, and that is true. They need a warrant
to go into your
issued
phone
by a judge in order to search your phone,
and it's based on probable cause. That's why you shut up. You don't give them a reason to go into your phone. If they're just snooping, they got to articulate some reason to go into your phone to get that warrant. So never give up your phone. Not willingly, but never give up the code.
When he says don't give up the phone, let's be clear. Yeah. Don't fight with the officers. If they take because what we do want is we want our people to make it out of these interactions alive, if possible. So if the officer takes your phone, don't fight with them. But what I will advise to do, and I saw this on I believe on our Facebook account, someone had commented that what people are doing to protect themselves is, if you can afford it, put a GoPro video camera in your vehicle so that you can turn it on if you are being stopped by law enforcement, and it can record the interaction. Yeah. And you don't have to let the officer know. Now, that's in California. Now, if you live in another state, you need to check your state's laws regarding recording officers, because I believe there are some states, and I think we discussed this before, that do not allow the recording of officers. So you do need to check the state that you live in. There are some states that do not allow it, meaning that it is a crime.
Because of the First Amendment, that's up against the First Amendment.
I'm telling you that there are. So until that's challenged, there are some states that do not allow the recording of officers. We have another comment, Sheepdog Protector. So do not use the face unlock feature.
Right.
I think by that, what they mean is that on their phone, they have the face unlock feature. And so what if the officer were to just take their phone and put it up to your face? I don't use the facial recognition software. Right. I would not utilize it.
And here's the thing. Let me clear up something, because it goes to this next question. When I said don't give up your phone, I actually do mean you don't give your phone to them. If they are going to arrest you, they will find your phone. You see? So I'm not saying don't pull it out and start showing it to them and stuff like that. Now you may have it out because you want to record the situation. Okay, I can see that. Now sometimes what you might do is your sound could be just as good. You can put that phone right here in a pocket and turn it on, or lay it on the seat or in the center and have it on.
But let me say this, audio alone, if you can get audio and video, that is best. So if you can't afford to get one of the GoPro cameras in your car, the other thing that you can do, as soon as you see the red and blue lights come on and you know you're about to be pulled over, call someone. Call someone.
Have them on the line.
So that it can be captured. And a lot of times people have those the devices for holding their phones right there for using for GPS. So if you have your phone there, turn it on, turn the cam, put it on record, turn the camera so that your phone can capture what's going on.
And the beautiful part is this: if that occurs, the only thing that's going to be heard is, "Am I free to leave?" And then the officer's response, and you saying, "I take the Fifth Amendment. Here's my ID." That's all that phone will record. Everything else is going to come after that. Will probably be coming from the officers, but that's your routine, period. Now,
and we have stated this many times that you should. Now, again, Mr. Staten likes for you to ask that question, even if it's clear under the circumstances. So, for example, if you're driving your car and they put the red and blues on you and pull you over, it's kind of clear that you are not free to leave, that you are being detained. But it is a good thing to go ahead and ask that question. Now, the officer may be a smart aleck and say, "What the hell do you think? I pulled you over. You saw me. Hell yeah, you're detained."
Then I'll take the Fifth Amendment and I'll talk to my lawyer. Here's my ID.
And here's my registration. Here's my insurance if you're driving the car.
That's right.
We have a comment from CC Badger. Good idea. However, they go through your car after the fact. I've seen this happen. Yes, if they arrest someone, they will search the car. Incident to arrest. The law does allow them to do that.
But there is something else.
Go ahead.
Community caretaker. They can only do an inventory search of your car if that car has violated the rules of the road. It's blocking the road. It's something like that. That's where they get to move the car and do an inventory search.
Well, that's another justification. So they can search it, incident to arrest. But if it is also parked in a way where it is
blocking traffic hazard, a danger to
then
people,
they can tow it. And
then
do an inventory search.
Right. Now, the search incident to arrest, even that, though, there has to be some reason, some cause to look into your car. Now, for example, if you're arresting me because of a suspended license charge, that might not mean that you can go into cupboards and bags and things in my car. You can park my car, and you may be able to tow it.
I think you're wrong on that. I think the search incident to arrest, if the person is in the vehicle, they can search the area within that person's purview. But the courts have determined that the back seat is basically the entire interior of that car is within that person's reach.
But bags.
We do have a comment here from CC Badger. It's really sad we have to protect ourselves from the police. They are supposed to protect us. It is unfortunate. And they have these mottos that they are there to serve and protect. I say, show us that. Show our community that that's what you are there to do. Because what we see you doing is killing us, and killing us for minor things, and killing us when we're not a threat to you, and pepper spraying us as they did the lieutenant for merely asking the question and stating that he didn't feel safe, which no one in the way in which they approached him would have felt safe. And then they increased his fear by the comments that they made to him.
Yep. And when you say that's sad, and when you're saying that there's a what do you call that? There's a dichotomy. There's something going on here, a flip side thing going on, whereby the ones who are to protect are the ones who harm. We're starting to move into these things that I believe, which is that America has this sickness going on, and the sickness is not a cold or a flu or a pandemic. The sickness is deeper in terms of a mental illness going on, to where we can believe that something is happening and it's not happening. We will make up something happening and it wasn't happening. And in that way, that's why you can only reconcile.
Why don't you give us when you say we, who are you talking about? You're talking about law enforcement.
Well,
creating a false narrative about what has transpired.
Exactly. I mean, look, I always got to go back to the history and go back to, do laws change people and change behavior? Sometimes they can, in that they dictate what you should do. Laws can dictate what you can do, where you can go, how you can do it, what you can wear. But laws that we treat each other equally, laws that say people have equal rights, who enforces that? Because those are the people who are supposed to enforce it, the police. But that is not their agenda. It hasn't been since their birth. I mean, here's something I always ponder. Why do they get to wear a bulletproof vest all the time, every day? What's going to happen? I understand I'm in the line of fire and stuff. But it also emboldens you, too, that you can march into situations and you are treating it like war. And it's not war. But something inside you is telling you that that person over there must be doing something wrong somehow, some way. I'm going to presume it first. And then you tell me you're not. And that's where the whole conversation, you prove to me I shouldn't be messing with you. And that's the ass backwards way of thinking. That is the insane way of thinking.
And that's not
that
the
we
law.
see. And it's not the law. That's why it's insane. That's why I say there's a mental illness going on. There's something going on deeper, because you would never believe that that's some logical or reasonable way to behave. Not at all. You don't walk. Let's say I come visit your house. I may be an asshole, but I don't walk into the house going, hey, throwing your stuff around and what do you got under here, Carm? What are you doing? And you think, well, sir, geez, I don't even know you. You're just into my house here. I've done nothing to you, and you're coming at me that way. That's because I believe you got something. You see, I've been trained to believe that. I've been told that. Everything in my life tells me that you're doing something. I just haven't caught you yet. And where does that come from? Why is that ingrained into a philosophy of protect and serve? Why?
Do you have an answer for that?
Yes, I do.
Tell the people. Tell the people.
Look, we haven't been on the right foot in America in a long time. We've allowed and allowed and allowed and allowed things to go forward, not realizing what real problems are here. We can love everybody, and I believe in loving everybody and things, but sometimes your love is not accepted. Many times your love is not accepted, whether you love or not. So as a people, we have tried to survive. We've tried to put up with things that we say, wow, how it's horrifying that we have to put up with things. But, sometimes when the rat is in the corner, when the animal's in the corner and they have no way out, there's only going to be one big resolution. That's going to be conflict and big conflict. And I think it reared its ugly head here in the Civil War and during that time. What Civil War is very difficult, to start and have. Here, we had it over a fundamental difference. And that difference still lies to this day when we can see people roll around with Confederate flags, wanting to keep the monument, saying that that's their history, their heritage. Because when you say that, you're not in 2021. You don't care about 2021. You care about 1856, 1865, and then 1888, when there was a hotbed issue over, do we maintain our society in the way we had it going? Things change for reasons and hopefully good things. And we've tried to point out that there are bullies in the block, and it's not necessarily us. It's not the people we see every day. It's the people who come in. Here's something I did last night in class. The mayor of the town that the boy was killed in, he made a point that, a black guy, he made a point that no police officers live in that area. None who police the area live there. Now we've got pop officers here. See, they tried to, put officers into communities and things and get to know everybody and stuff. And I posed that to my class last night.
What pop officers do you know that actually live in the neighborhoods that they patrol?
They don't.
Here in Sacramento.
They don't. Okay. But it's an idea thrown around. Okay. I remember offering money. To move into areas. Now, problem with that is I look at that and I go, oh my goodness. So that means that everybody who's policing you are coming from other towns. They play with you all day and then they go home. Now, I posed that to my class last night teaching. A lot of people felt, hey, that's because, officers could feel they're in danger if they live in the city limits where, they're policing and things like that. And I challenged them to go, well, wait a minute. When does that happen? Do you hear that happening all the time? No, you don't.
Do not. You do
hear. Not at all.
You do hear about us being killed by them.
Exactly.
You do not hear the opposite occurring. We do have some comments in the chat. CC Badger, this world has been unequal since it was created. The police whom are made to enforce the law do not, and the prejudiced judicial system backs them up in certain cases.
That's right.
And that is true. And we can look, as Lawman said, we can look at history. When we were being lynched, did they protect us? Right. When Emmett Till was killed, did they protect him? Right. Even in the instance, a lot of times they wouldn't even arrest someone, right? And if they would, we knew what the outcome was going to be. Yeah. And we're seeing that same history repeat itself. When our young men are killed by law enforcement, most times there are no charges. And even in the cases where there are charges, they are usually acquitted.
Definitely.
We also have a comment from but also regarding what CC Badger said, we can look at all the times where there were towns that were thriving African-American towns,
right, and
something would happen and they would come in, burn the town down, kill as many of the people as they possibly could, and law enforcement did nothing.
Rosewood.
Yes.
Tulsa.
Yes.
What was so special about that was the first time in the U.S. that the fight was from the air. Planes were used to drop kindle and wood and fire on homes to start them on fire. It's the first time.
Which one?
In 1919 in Rosewood. In Tulsa. Yeah.
Sheepdog protector. I wear a vest everywhere I go. It's taser proof and bullet to all handguns, and I can put a rifle in it. Sheepdog protector must live in a state that allows that. Here in California,
wear a jacket big enough,
Yeah, and unless you have a concealed carry permit, you couldn't have your rifle concealed inside of your vest. But is it coming to that? Is it coming to that where we all need to be
get our own Kevlar?
Which though, it's a crime. Well, I think you have to be engaged in another crime to have a bulletproof vest here.
Right.
And something else regarding what you said regarding law enforcement and just their complete and utter disregard for treating us with respect when they stop us.
Right. I'm querying, where does that come from? And the only place I can search is our history, is the history.
And it's not just these traffic stops.
Right.
I don't know if you've had to deal with it, but I'm a guess
accused of stealing.
I'm a guess that you have. But even in the courts. This was some years ago because I've been practicing for a very long time. But I went to, on more than one occasion, I went to enter a judge's chamber, and a female deputy told me that I was not allowed to enter the chamber. And this is a judge's chamber that I had been in before, and we were scheduled for a negotiation. And I had to walk past her into the chamber, and she came into the chamber as if she was going to pull me out. Your Honor, please let your deputy know who I am. And that luckily took care of the problem. There was another time where I was outside of a department, Department 3. There was a fairly new deputy who didn't recognize me, but I'm standing there in a suit with a briefcase. And he said, defendants have to wait out here. Now, I had all the accoutrements that would let you know that I was probably not a person accused of a crime, although I could have been, because I tell my clients to dress professionally when they come to court.
Correct.
But that was his first assumption, that I must be a defendant.
Right.
And I've heard the gentleman who has, he's written a book. He has the foundation. Oh my goodness, his name is eluding me right now, but he's gone all over the country. And I remember he told the story in his book. I think it's Brian Stevenson.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Where he is sitting in a courtroom waiting for a court case to be called. And I think it's the judge comes out onto the bench and says, defendants need to wait outside. And he's seated at counsel table in a suit. And it was just, what is the mindset that would make this judge not see or not initially believe that this person is an attorney?
Yeah. I mean, I go to El Dorado County. I go to other counties where they don't know me as much. And, you can get asked for your bar card. Let me see your bar card. So, yes, that continues to happen. Plus, I walk into a store and I'm not dressed up or not. And people can think I'm stealing something.
Yes, and while they are watching me in my suit with my big Michael Kors bag, thinking that I'm about to steal, somebody else is in that store, a person not of color, probably stealing them blind.
Yeah, that happened to me at CBS a lot.
CC Badger states it's their ignorance that allows them to think those things.
Yeah, and fear.
And she's asking Sheepdog to send her a protective suit.
Look, I'm gonna tell you something. I love Public Enemy, and I'll tell you,
Public Enemy,
the group, and their album, "Fear of a Black Planet," was mind blowing when you really listen to what they were trying to say. That a lot of this is fear that we're gonna take over, that we're gonna be able to sit at a table with you, fear that we're gonna have nice houses. Fear that the planet will turn dark.
So this is a fear of white supracy?
Probably so. Or at least
white supremacists.
It's an opposite of it, for sure.
Their fear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And is that as simple as that? And because this makes it really simple, right? And we solved the problem of the world. Here we go. See, if that is true. And that's why I say the mental illness kicks in, because we don't want to believe, we don't want to admit it and say it, but it's right here in front of us.
CC Badger says, fight the power.
Yes.
You got to fight the power.
Powers that be. Elvis was a hero the most.
But he never meant
nothing to me. She's straight up racist. Sucker was simple and plain.
MF
and John
Wayne.
Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah.
And burn, Hollywood burn. I smell a riot going on. First they're guilty, now they're gone. Oh no. It's funny because that even came up when we talk about racism, right? That the money that went into funding gangster rap and not funding positive. Yes.
Because you will notice.
Yes, there was a turn. Right in the early 90s, man.
And that's probably
everything was gangster.
That's probably a whole another show for us.
3 shows. Because I heard there was a conference. There was an actual conference
on what should be funded.
Yes. And who would be going along?
Because as a people, this is unfortunate, but as a people, our wealth is de minimis.
Yeah.
It is de minimis. And the only reason that there is some wealth in the African American community is because there are people from other countries who have wealth, and they have more wealth than what we have in our own country.
Yeah.
And I believe there is, at the rate at which we are going, I forget what the year is. I want to say it might be 2053, that if things keep going as they're going, Black wealth will basically be at zero. Now, some people don't believe that because they like, well, we see Oprah and we see these rappers and it looks like they have money, and there's Will Smith, but the number of millionaires that we have is de minimis when you look at the number of millionaires that other people have. Now, this is not the fault of us not working hard. Right. People will try, and white supremacists will try and have you believe that, oh, you don't have the wealth because you didn't work hard. If you look at the policies, the government policies, they prevented us from being able to build that wealth.
Landowners.
My parents couldn't buy a home in certain neighborhoods, even if they had the money. My father, who fought in World War II for his country, could not get the benefits that were promised to him by his country in that GI Bill.
White ones did.
Yes, they did. And so they were able to buy houses that gained value and build wealth for their families. Are we talking today, lawman? Are we talking?
Yes.
Are we telling the truth?
Yes, because the truth has to come out.
The truth needs to be told.
Right. These are the conversations people have to have, but we are somewhat afraid to have. You know, we have got to be real about all of this. You know, because it's a crisis. Yeah, I would say it's a crisis. Unite, because it's later than we think. Unite. It's all we should be thinking of is unite, because it really is later than you think. And
everyone likes to say, I would never live this particular way. I would never do this. You don't know how you might end up having to live if things continue the way that they have been going.
Wise up, right? Rise up. You know, all of that stuff. I mean, you can go watch Eyes on the Prize and stuff to get fired up. I mean, you know, look, there's so many examples of inspiration in our story, and it really shouldn't be, but it is. And yet we now today have got to keep that going. We have to keep up the fire.
Now, let me ask you this. And again, we're going to have to devote a whole show to this, but why do you think that they funded the rap that depicts us so negatively in the community, and the rap that has us talking about killing each other, even though we're all in the same boat in terms of that lack of wealth?
Because it allows us to it allows others to look at us as savages, as individuals who don't care about their lives. You see, who you'll kill your brother because you are not your brother's keeper, and I better get what I need to get and discard the fact that my brother may need to eat too. You see, it promotes this isolation theory, this me and only me theory. And when you promote that, and when you pour money into it and you make it glamorous, then you eat it up. People eat it up. I want to be that too. I can't believe, and I thought I knew things, how many rappers there are out there who claim they're making a lot of money. And I go, but who's buying the records? You know, how many, and this funding of that, it was just fine. And the irony of it all is Ice Cube, right? You know, it just as an example, turned from one side to the other, right? I mean, now he's making children's things, you know, everything's kind of changed and stuff. And that's what that is metamorphosis, right? You know, you can be right.
For him.
Right. And he sees the future, and most people will see the future. You just got to look for it. Because if you look for it and we're not there, It's our fault.
And when you say we look for it and we're not there,
Yeah.
you mean us as the people?
Yeah. Yeah.
We
us
do
driving.
have a comment
Okay.
from Sheepdog Protector.
Oh.
Having a permit to carry lets them know I don't have any felonies, and I hand it to them with my ID right away, and I tell them where my firearm is.
Exactly.
Except we know that they killed somebody who legitimately had a permit. Who was it? Philando Castile. So he legitimately had a permit. Yeah. He properly told the officer about it, and the officer killed him anyway. Why?
Now, I'll throw this out there. There are the open carry states. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that we, as a people, are also taking, advantage of that too, because that's not one where it's a CCW needed, where you got to explain why and justify why. But open carry states, I'm gonna guess that we're out there and we're allowed to benefit from that law too. I would hope, because that's where people went to the state capitals, right? And they were proud to carry their guns on the state capitol and go inside and intimidate.
They did that in Michigan.
Things like that. I mean, so many states. It just seemed like it was the thing to do. It was a show of power, right? And then it culminated when? January 6th, where we hearing stories that the police were told, hey, just, let them by.
Well, there's no need to be afraid. Right. They're not those Black Lives Matter people who are protesting peacefully.
Right. Although they're coming here with these ties and things like that, which, what do you do with that? What do you do?
One thing I want to get back to, and I know we're going to have to do a whole show on it, but there were several rap groups that were positive, and they did not get the funding to continue that positivity. One that comes to mind is Arrested Development.
Exactly.
Tennessee. Mr. Wendell.
Yep.
And they didn't get that funding that we see the negative rap stars receiving. The stars that are somewhat minstrels, right?
Yeah. But Lil Wayne? I don't know.
Lil Wayne is one. There's the other, I can't keep up with him with the different colored hair and the just
that guy Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Oh, well, I wasn't even talking about him.
Okay. I don't get it. I didn't get him, just didn't get him. That's all. Just didn't get him.
Yeah. No. There's a number of African American rappers who, and maybe they've changed it now, but had dyed hair and just,
And one of the things was in the 80s.
Look.
Yes. One of the things in the 80s, we got to remember when Public Enemy came out, it became it was a change of philosophy, that we are proud. We are proud people on this planet, and that we should be proud and stand up for ourselves and stuff. And that message, I mean, it resonated with me. I'm sure it resonated with anyone who listened to them. And even today, they're now a little older, people moving on. EPMD, I mean, Eric Sermon,
but what's being funded now is the hate the guy who lives on the other side of town. I'm going to shoot him down. I got my gun.
Pull some licks and
but
stuff.
Nothing about, perhaps I should, if I really just want to address somebody with, and we're not advocating, let me be clear, we're not advocating for violence.
Right.
But if you're not taking your gun to do something to someone who is oppressing you, what are you killing the man for who is in the same situation as you, just on the other side of town?
Right. On streets you don't own.
Businesses you don't own. So that kind of hatred. And in Sacramento, we have seen a rash of killings in 2020 of young men being taken out of this world by other young men.
Yeah. It is a business at this point.
Oh,
it is a business.
A business of putting people in jail for life sentences so that they can work for the prison industrial complex. What I'm telling you, young men, is don't let them do that to you.
That's right.
Don't fall for the okie doke, because one is now dead and now one is in prison for the rest of his life. 2 birds with 1 stone is how your oppressor sees that.
Right.
Don't let him do it.
We have to value your life and your brother's life. Value it. Don't take it.
All right, lawman, we've kind of gone slightly over our time, but you usually have a tidbit that you want to share, a principle, or
this whole week, I guess I was when the guy was killed, and then I saw the soldier, and then I saw some older stuff. I started going back and looking at older stuff, and I think what happens is I get into a great sadness, that because everyone can express why is this happening to us, but I refuse to do that anymore about why. I'm not confused as to why this is happening to us, because when I do that, then there's some room for me to doubt.
So is it happening because they see us as criminals?
They see us as individuals who do not have the right to share the planet, period. And whatever forces that be, okay? I mean, whatever forces that be who join in that philosophy, which is why it is more important than ever that we look at each other in a different way, in a different light. And I don't know exactly what it looks like, but when you look into my eyes, I want you to see, I love you, I'm with you, and not, I want something from you. You see, I want you to do for me. And and I always say that because I remember back in the 60s, and I thought, and we looked at people differently than we look at today.
We were a community.
Yeah.
Now we've become something else.
Yeah.
We've become something else where we're not willing to help the person that lives near us.
So and we see
them as a threat to our own personal gain. But the community is not going to survive if we're not in it together.
Right. So we got to practice that. We got to spread that around. Let's look at each other a little differently now, because it's later than we think. It really is.
It is. It is. And then I would just add, for those of you that have that are driving and maybe traffic stopped, again, try and keep your registration and your insurance on your dashboard where you don't even have to hand it to the officer, right? Officer, it is right there on the dash. Officer, I'm not going to move. I want you. There's my ID. There is my registration. There is my insurance. And if they do attempt to physically detain you because we want you to make it home to your kids, to your mothers, to your wives, try to follow the protocol.
That's right.
Don't argue. Don't fight with them. Leave the arguing for us, because if they arrest you and it's wrong, we are here and we have your back.
That's right.
Lawman and Carmen B.
There's never been a courthouse on a street corner. There's never a courthouse.
Want you to make it home to your family.
Right.
Even if they are arresting you for something you did not do, don't fight with them. Not because that means you're weak,
right? Because
we want you to make it home to your loved ones. We will do the fighting in court.
Exactly.
Lawman.
Carmen B. I know this is emotional. This is, look, we all should be fired up. We have to be fired up, or else we'd have no feelings anymore. So we'll be back here.
Again, next Friday.
That's right.
At 6 p.m.
Yes.
Courtside out.
Out. All right.